Good evening and welcome to the West Hartford Board of Education meeting for today, which is Tuesday, May 21st at 7 p.m. Cammie, would you please call the roll call?
Mrs. Blanks?
Here.
Dr. Greenberg?
Here.
Mr. Levine?
Here.
Mr. Paul Uke?
Here.
Ms. Poland?
Here.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson?
Here.
Mr. Zadanowitz?
Here.
Student Representative Gus Bacon?
Here.
Megan Striff-Cave?
Here.
Megan, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, there is a slight revision to the agenda order where we will have the student reports precede the superintendent report so that one of our students can get to a previous commitment or to a commitment. We don't have any student participation tonight, and for public communications, I don't believe we have any people signed up, so we're going to ask our guests to come on up to the podium.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome. I'd like to thank you for getting me on the agenda so quick and early this evening. I'm delighted to be here. I'm John Seiler, Assistant Executive Director of the Middle Level Programs and Services for the Connecticut Association of Schools. Each year, we receive nominations for the C.G.S. Exemplary Educator Award from throughout the state, and the fact that one of your teachers' nominations was selected for recognition is a credit to both the school and the principal that authored the application. I'd like to ask Catherine Gallagher to join me at the podium now. Catherine, the Connecticut Association of Schools is pleased to recognize you as the Middle Level Exemplary Educator of the Year for 2019 and 20. To quote King Philip Middle School's principal, Joy Wright, Kate is an energetic, creative, dynamic, and hardworking individual committed to student and teacher success. Kate, your supervisors lauded the impact you have had on the entire King Philip community through your participation and leadership in many extracurricular school climate initiatives. It became obvious for the C.G.S. Selection Committee that based on Catherine's passion and love for teaching a world language, together with her willingness and desire to share this enthusiasm with her students and the entire school community, she truly deserves this award. We admire that you make every effort to stay abreast of new teaching techniques and always engaging technology. And you integrate these strategies into many, if not all, of your classes. We are convinced that each of your students is special to you, and you differentiate your instruction and expectations so that all can be successful. While we know there are many model middle school educators throughout Connecticut, I am pleased that for the 2019-20 school year, Catherine's achievements will represent their collective excellence. Congratulations on your selection, and thank you for your many contributions to middle school education in West Hartford and Connecticut. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. And thank you and congratulations to you, Kate. Well done. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business. I don't believe we have any, so I'll move into new business. New business is the State of Connecticut Healthy Food Certification for the year 2019-2020, and the recommendation is that the Board of Education, bear with me, pursuant to C.G.S. Section 1021, 5F, certify that all food items offered for sale to students in the schools under its jurisdiction and not exempted from the Connecticut Nutrition Standards published by the Connecticut State Department of Education will comply with the Connecticut Nutrition Standards during the period of July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. This certification shall include all food offered for sale to students separately from reimbursable meals at all times and from all sources, including but not limited to school stores, vending machines, school cafeterias, and any fundraising activities on school premises sponsored by the school or by non-school organizations and groups. Allow the sale to students of food items that do not meet the Connecticut Nutrition Standards, provided that the following conditions are met. 1, the sale is in connection with an event occurring after the end of the regular school day or on the weekend. 2, the sale is at the location of the event. And 3, the food items are not sold from a vending machine or school store. An event is an occurrence that involves more than just a regularly scheduled practice, meeting, or extracurricular activity. The regular school day is the period from midnight before to 30 minutes after the end of the official school day. Location means where the event is being held. Allow the sale to students of beverages not listed in Section 10-221Q of the Connecticut General Statutes, provided that the following conditions are met. 1, the sale is in connection with an event occurring after the end of the regular school day or on the weekend. 2, the sale is at the location of the event. And 3, the beverages are not sold from a vending machine or school store. An event is an occurrence that involves more than just a regular scheduled practice, meeting, or extracurricular activity. The regular school day is the period from midnight before to 30 minutes after the end of the official school day. Location means where the event is being held. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion and questions for Mr. Ward?
So I'll just say this is the 12th time you are renewing this. This is under state law, is a very specific set of requirements. I would have thought this would have been something that could be done administratively, but no, it requires a formal board motion once a year, and it's worth approximately $70,000 a year of reimbursement at the 10 cents a meal. So glad to answer any questions you've got.
Tim Brzezinski, Chef Tim, and Dave and I spoke about in the fall. Tim will be here. I know he's done some listening with students over the past couple weeks to talk to them about what they're seeing in schools, and that will be more about the overall nutrition services program and what's going on. This is really the pro forma federal government approval.
Thank you, Chip. All in favor? Aye. All right, motion carries.
I say for the 13th time, we have snacks, healthy ones.
Healthy snacks, yeah.
Now we will move to the non-staff communications and reports from student board representatives. Who would?
Good evening, everyone. Everyone at Hall is relieved that AP exams are over, and we are moving into the home stretch of the school year. Final projects and exam preparations are underway, and senioritis is hitting hard. Spring sports are in full swing. Boys and girls lacrosse both recently beat Conard in their matchups, as did boys tennis. And Hall runner Jenna Zdanowitz, who won the 3,200-meter race at the Greater Hartford Invite recently, created a new school record time of 11 minutes, 1 second, 0.41. So that's 2 miles. That's not a 1 mile time. Also, huge congrats to boys tennis coach Jim Solomon. Hall recently defeated Simsbury 7-0, and with the win, he earned his 571st career victory, making him the winningest, that's a real word, I didn't make that up, winningest boys tennis coach in CT, surpassing Dan Borgman of New Canaan. Very impressive. Junior prom was last weekend at Meneely's in South Windsor, and it was a blast. Seniors are looking forward to their prom, which will be on June 1st at the Basketball Hall of Fame in Springfield, Massachusetts. Congratulations to the 9 Hall writers who were honored last week at UConn by the Connecticut Writing Project, which recognizes excellence in students' writing from grades K through 12. Our 9 writers were selected from over 1,700 submissions from across the state. The Black Box's final production of the year, The Tempest, finished its run last week, and I had the pleasure of seeing this incredible interpretation of Shakespeare's classic and was blown away by the cast, especially their talent of memorizing lines. Upcoming performances includes Hall Comedy Improv Troupe's final show on May 31st, the Acting Department's Fictional Character Day on June 5th, and SPS's Senior Thesis Night on June 10th. Hall's Concert Jazz Band recently attended the Essentially Ellington High School Jazz Festival 2019 in New York City and received many awards for Outstanding Trombone Section, Outstanding Guitar Soloist Brennan Ravenberg, Outstanding Trombone Soloist Eli Heinen, Outstanding Bass Trombone Soloist Gavin Baker, Outstanding Tenor Saxophone Soloist Yontef Matog, and honorable mention soloists were given to Val Barrio on clarinet and Gavin Gray on bass. That's all for tonight. Thank you very much.
All right. Hello, everyone. So to start off, Conard has a new website. It's been up for, I think, about a week now, and the feedback we've received has been really great, especially for mobile devices. So thanks to the IT teams who created it. Also, Conard was named as a recipient of the 2019 College Success Award. So Conard is one of the 1,700 schools nationwide that has a successful track record of graduating students who enroll in 2- or 4-year colleges and are going to be ready for college-level coursework. As a follow-up to the very successful Singing in the Rain production earlier this spring, student Charlie Uthgenot was nominated as the Best Actor for the 2019 Sundom Awards, and Renee Sutherland was also nominated for Best Choreography. Congratulations to Conard sophomore Gabriella Zolov for winning this year's Celebrate West Hartford 5K shirt logo contest, and the logo she designed is going to be on all the t-shirts that they give out for the 5K race, so look out for that. Last week wrapped up the AP exams period, which was a very long 2 weeks, but we made it. Over 600 Conard students took an exam, and over 1,300 exams were taken at Conard. So, in sports, last night, during the annual Mayor's Cup baseball game, Conard came out on top thanks to senior pitcher Matt Biazaglu, who pitched a complete game and only gave up 2 runs in 7 innings. Last night's game was the 4th time in the last 5 years that the Chieftains were presented with the Mayor's Cup, so that's pretty awesome. Last week was the junior prom. I heard it was a really good time, and the senior prom is this Friday. Gabe Suarez was named as the Scholar Athlete from the Northern Connecticut Chapter of the National Football Foundation. 8th graders at Sedgwick and Bristow are doing their day in the life at Conard High School thing, where they're going to come here and come to Conard and take a tour given by Conard students. And on May 30th and the 31st is the Unified Theater production. They're going to be showing what they've been doing.
Thank you, Gus and Megan. Okay, we move to our staff communication and reports. Superintendent's report, Mr. Moore.
Thank you. As our students alluded to, this is definitively the busiest time of the year. We talk about other times, but just there's events pretty much every night that if we went through the calendar. And one of the things that's special this time of year that I want to recognize from our families and as a heartfelt thank you, because I'm not sure if you guys get it the same way I do, but I was at a concert Sunday night in town, a solo choir concert, and afterwards it had to have been 10 parents coming up and thanking me for the community supporting the arts in this way, which is really a special thing. And I can't thank them enough, and that thank really should go to the board and your support for the arts over the years. Some of the things coming up are none's more special than another. I'm sure if you're a senior in high school, the prom's very special. Not so much to me. But next Tuesday night, we have our recognition dinner that we host in Town Hall for all students entering the military from West Hartford schools. No, it's not West Hartford Public Schools. We host it to recognize those from coming from all schools in West Hartford. And it is a great night. It's good that we give recognition to these kids, and this is something that Paul Vicinis helps to run and does yeoman's work every year on that. So that is next Tuesday night. Then next Thursday night is Interrel at the Bushnell. If you haven't ever been to Interrel, it is something to be experienced. And that venue is very special for our kids to be performing there. So a great night. And then what I think is the central hallmark of West Hartford Public Schools in many ways is the Unified Theater performance May 30th and 31st at Conard. It's the largest Unified Theater performance in town. It brings both Hall and Conard together. I'm pretty sure it's the largest Unified Theater performance in the country now. Unified Theater did start in West Hartford at Conard High School. It is, if you want to have faith in the future and faith in kids and believe in possibilities, it is the one night I tell people to come to. It is the only thing I've ever made my family from Massachusetts drive down to see is Unified Theater. So really, if you've never been there, it's something to see. So that's that.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Staff reports and board discussions. Personnel report. Background, Mr. Rick Ledwith will report.
Good evening, everyone. The personnel report can be found on pages 3 through 6 of your board packet. And this is one of our larger reports of the year, as it reflects the retirements as well as any resignations that we've received for the end of the school year. And as of this evening, we have 23 retirements and 16 resignations for the end of the school year. And for comparative purposes, we had 25 retirements last year and 27 the previous year. So we're right in line with where we've been over the last several years. Our turnover point at this point is heading into the summer is about 3%. And we undoubtedly will receive some resignations as we head into the summer. So when we report out to you in the fall at our first board meeting, we'll probably be in that 5.5% range. And that's very similar to where we've been over the last several years. In terms of teacher recruitments, you can see that we've hired 8 contracted teachers for the upcoming school year. And actually, since this was printed on Friday, we've hired 2 more. So we're up to 10. We will be hiring 20 or so over the next several weeks, many of whom that we met through our career fair at Conard High School back in April, as well as the Yukon Fair, the Central Connecticut Fair, and then the Correct Minority Teacher Career Fair as well, which was held in late March. And as we talk about hiring new teachers, we thought we'd talk a little bit about the diversity of our staff. I know Paul Vicinis mentioned it in the district profile and performance report at our last board meeting. Our current teacher diversity is at 8%. And 5 years ago, that number was at 6%. And our student population today is at about 42, 43%. 5 years ago, it was probably 37, 38%. So both those numbers are rising. So we've had some progress in diversifying our teaching staff as well as our leadership staff as well, leadership team. 25% of our principals are educators of color, which is good. So over the last several years, we have averaged over 20% of our new hires in each of those years have been teachers of color, but we are going to need to continue to, at the very least, sustain that number in the coming years, but really build on it to make an impact on that 8%. To really, we've made that move from 6 to 8. We really need to focus on getting from 8 to 10 in the very near future. So the challenge that we face as a district here in West Hartford is a challenge that essentially every district in the state of Connecticut faces, as well as every district virtually around the country. So in Hartford County, the average is 6.4%, and then we find larger percentages in the cities. So Hartford's at 25% minority representation. New Haven is at 25%. Bridgeport is at 25%, and those are very strong numbers. But when you look at the disparity between the student population and the teacher population, those districts, as well as we would say, we need to double our numbers. They would need to double their numbers. We would need to double, if not triple, our numbers. And when I say disparity, so I mentioned the 43% student diverse number, and our teacher population is at 8%, so that's a 35% disparity. Hartford is at 65%, Bridgeport is at 60%, and New Haven is at 60%. So this is a focus, an urgent focus that we're all paying very close attention to, and we need to do a much better job of increasing the diversity of our teaching staff as we move forward. Certainly, our partnership with the Crack Minority Teacher Recruitment Consortium is important. We've done some work with the historically black colleges and universities, which is important as well. The work that Rosina is doing with the Equity and Diversity Council certainly is going to help. I think one of those programs that we're really excited about, which we've mentioned before, is the Future Educators of Diversity program that we've recently rolled out. So I'll throw a couple of other numbers at you. So in 2010, 90% of the graduates from the teacher prep programs in Connecticut were white. So today, 82% of students enrolled in college prep programs in the state of Connecticut are white. So we're seeing some progress there. So the diversity of our teacher candidate pool is starting to show some promise of increasing. The work that Rosina is doing and Jamal Hines is doing, Laura White are doing with the Future Educators of Diversity program will enhance that pipeline of students leaving West Hartford, being interested in getting into teaching, having that opportunity at a college prep program here in Connecticut, and then getting those folks back to West Hartford. Right now we have about 30 students enrolled in that program between both high schools. Assuming 15 of those end up in a college prep program, which would be great. Ideally, it would be even better. But those are 15 folks. 3-4 years from now, we can get back into West Hartford. We're guaranteeing all of those folks interviews here in West Hartford, and that's the type of thing that outside of the box type of programs that we're doing here in West Hartford and that other districts are doing as well to continue to improve and enhance the diversity of our future teachers so that we can get that number from 8% to 10% over the coming years and higher than that. Truthfully, as I mentioned, that disparity, we need to lower that disparity, and in order to do that, we really need to a concerted effort at increasing those numbers. So we'll report back out in September, as we always do, as we finish up our hiring over the summer. Ideally, we'll be back to you in September with a number that's 8.5%, 8.6, 8.7. As I mentioned, we've hired 10 teachers already going into the summer. 3 are teachers of color. That's good, but we need to build on that and continue that as we move through the summer so we can make an impact on that overall 8% number. So that summarizes our personnel report for this month. I'd be happy to answer any questions specifically around our minority recruiting or about our retirements and resignations as well.
Thank you for sharing, and I appreciate your candor in recognizing the percentages we have now in terms of our staff that are of color, but I also appreciate you recognizing the need to have that to grow and not settling or lowering raising the bar of expectation. So thank you for your candor in that, and thank you for continuing to think outside of the box.
You're welcome. Good. All right. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is guidelines for student athlete handbook review. Background is Dr. Andy Morrow, who will report.
So I felt left out because, Paul always has the presentations, and so I felt like we'd do one tonight. Plus, we found a snappy little graphic that we thought would be nice on the screen. So, thank you for having us tonight. This is the update, as we had talked about in the past, of our student-athlete handbook. And so I wanted just to share with you a little bit about what's brought us here and what our plan is for the summer work and the fall work that we're going to be doing on this with the two high schools. So when students agree to represent their schools, they're really entering into a great opportunity. But as student athletes, they're agreeing to be governed not only by the Connecticut Athletic Conference, but also our district, and that they're representing their schools, they're representing themselves, and they're representing our communities. And so we believe that an individual makes a commitment to giving their best effort to the individual and the team goals, and that athletics, as you support, and athletics as done in our schools in our town, is really a rewarding and successful prospect for many of our students. So we recognized that in surveying a number of districts around, that our program and our policy handbook hadn't been updated in about 10 years, and looking at really a substantial, let's take it down to the studs and look at the nature of it. And so we decided that we really needed to go through and have a comprehensive review of this and involve a number of stakeholders in this. And so our plan identified really 3 areas of focus that we want to take a look at. We want to look at our overall compliance with the Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference, the regulations, the best practices that we're seeing in the area. We want to look at substance abuse policies that are in the handbook, the violations of 5520, which is our drug and alcohol policy, the preventions aspects that we have in that, and then really what we do to help people recover from mistakes that they might make, our student assistant team and the intervention process that we have in place for that. We also want to look at student athlete behavior and participation. When we talk about athletes representing our schools, and we talk about athletes representing the community, that comes with standards for representation. We want to make sure that those are clear. We want to make sure that those are consistent and that those represent really where we need them to be. So the committee members for this, our process is myself, Ann McCarran, as our Director of Secondary Education, both principals, Jason Siegel as the Athletic Director, Andrew Mayo, because remember, the substance abuse pieces on this also cover extracurricular activities and co-curricular activities that students engage in to represent, whether it's a school play, whether it's clubs or activities. This policy covers that as well. So we want to make sure that his voice is captured here as well. We're also going to have parent representatives involved in this committee, as well as student athletes, and to hear their voices and have them be a driving force, as well as coaches. And so our timeline for this is over the summer, We're going to start the process and looking at data collection, pulling together some of the research. We've already really begun this in talking with the neighboring districts, and Jason's been invaluable working with his peers to pull together best practices. What are other districts looking at? What really could we find that may be something that we should consider that we're not doing as far as interventions or different ways of structuring participation. In September and October, we're going to have a large number of focus group forums to gather input from stakeholders. This will involve parents, athletes, coaches, teachers. We want to involve mental health providers who do a lot of the different intervention pieces to make sure that the student assistant teams are operating clearly. In November, we're going to have this turned over and able to be reviewed by the Board of Education Policy Subcommittee, which really is designed for something like this, and we can work with them then in November. The entire committee can come and present this and really work through different ideas and make sure that that's something then that the policy committee is comfortable bringing forward to the board. And since this would be something that would be a major, we would envision it being some significant changes, and certainly we want it to be something that gets a very thorough analysis. We would have 2 readings, one for the December 3rd, first Board of Ed meeting, and second adoption on the 17th. And again, all of this is our plan and our timeline. If the policy committee needs more time in reviewing this as a subcommittee and so forth in November, then those dates can certainly move forward a little bit. But our goal would be to have this done by January 1st then. And with that, I'm open for any questions you might have.
Thank you. This is great. It's really important, and I'm delighted that you guys are taking it up. A couple of questions, but also just a brief comment on the timeline. This is an election year, and so just sort of to put it out there that November will be a transition from old and new to new members, and so there may actually be a little bit of time slippage. That's just an observation.
No, and I thought about that, but clearly, but I think at this point, I'd rather go with an ambitious timeline, and if we have to slip a little bit, I'd like to have something in place by the time that spring sports would be starting.
Oh, absolutely. I just wanted to say if we can't.
A very clear line to say this is when this begins.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's
I
great.
appreciate that, absolutely.
The question that I have is really about the breadth of it. I think this is really important and critical, but I also think it's important if we're going to look at policies, particularly around behavior and things, that it does in fact extend beyond the substance abuse problem to groups other than athletes. And my question is, first of all, whether that is already true, that the behavior things extend that far, and if not, I suggest they should. And if they do, could I suggest that we make that more public or front and center so that it's clear when students participate in these other things that they are in fact embraced by this, that I see that there's one arts person, but everybody else is a coach or an athlete or whatever, that you might consider bringing in people from these other groups, because I think the point of the behavior thing is exactly true for anybody who's representing.
That's a good point. We'll make sure to include that. That is already in here, that there is behavior pieces in here that talk about misconduct, that talk about infraction of school rules, that require administrative action. It can be left up to the discretion, let's say, of the administrator. And we want to make sure that we're going through and making this very clear.
Right. I'm just thinking that people, music folks who travel, the math team, whatever, they all represent West Hartford.
Correct.
If I could, just the historical context, I was on one of the committees. Chuck Landros chaired the last time when this came through. I believe it was 2005. I was on the committee as a teacher and a coach, and it took really 2 years with this feeling, because the feeling was it wasn't amongst many. The push-pull was, it isn't fair to athletes because this has happened, this is 20 years ago, but the lead in the play gets caught the Friday night and is performing on Saturday, or is in I almost said interrupt. That would be wrong. Is in a elite choir. Yes, we haven't had that happen. But is in an elite choir. And the argument and pushback from those teachers and parents was, but you get a grade in this also. So in acting, you get a grade. And in interel, you get a, not interel, geez, I got to stop that. In the elite choir groups, you also get a grade, and the performance is part of the grade. So now that punishment came with a grading component, whereas then it's unfair because the athlete didn't. So actually, this did kind of try to thread a needle with that, but it's still been considered the athlete's handbook, mostly because of numbers. Everybody is aware of it. But I think you make a very good point, and that's always kind of this push-pull of how do we walk that line with grading and otherwise.
Yep.
And so, and Andy Mayo, I'm quite sure, because where it says teachers in different groups, those will be music teachers and acting teachers in addition to teachers that are coaches too.
Yep.
But your point is exceptionally
Yeah,
taken.
and again, I don't want to be unfair to athletes in exactly that sense. I don't know how to resolve either the problem that the lead in the play is the lead in the play.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, that's tough too. But I wouldn't want someone, I mean, the whole point, the reason that we asked you guys to review this was we were concerned that behaviors had consequences. And it wouldn't be fair to say these behaviors have consequences only if you're athletes.
Absolutely.
So as long as you're
absolutely.
sort of thinking in those terms, I don't know how to thread the needle
Correct.
any better, but.
Correct.
The biggest difficulty sometimes in what happens today, truthfully, is really clubs, and that the music and sports, we're kind of locked in, whereas a club, the membership isn't as official, and so what does that mean in terms of this? So that's something we also need to lock down.
On that same note, my concerns exactly. A student athlete gets caught with a picture of them with a beer can, and they're suspended for X, or whatever the rules are. If X student is caught with a beer can and a picture on Instagram, they're celebrated. There's no reaction. There's no course of action for that student at all. And that in itself is really a problem for me, because the fact that, if they don't get to sing in that choir because they got caught drinking, it's part of their grade and it's reflective, okay? So you can't sing in it. That's one portion of your entire grade throughout the whole semester of the year. Student athlete could get caught significantly drinking and get kicked off a team and can lose $250,000 scholarship to college. So what's worse? A B? $250,000 lost scholarship because that athlete, if we're treating them that much differently. So I'm really concerned about this, always have been. I think that, this violation, I don't know a lot about this violation 5520, what the state mandates or what we're mandating, but I am concerned about it. And because said student getting caught on Instagram with a beer in their hand should have some repercussions, and right now we don't have any.
I'm going to push back on you a little bit, and then I'll let Andy push back. So, and in a good-natured way, because I think I understand what you're saying. There is an element of a student that has a picture of them with a beer can on a Saturday night. Okay, the truth is that student that's not involved in anything else, that happens next week, a week before graduation with either of you. And if they are not involved in sports or an extracurricular activity, then we're talking about we're disciplining completely for non-school events. The difference, I think, with both sports and with music and activities is you're representing the school, and you're agreeing when you represent the school, you're going to behave a certain way. That student isn't necessarily representing the school that's pictured, that's not involved in anything else. So to have a discipline tied to it. So, and I don't think that's what you're saying. That's what I mean.
The argument there is, said student athlete has a Hall baseball cap on, or does not have it, just has a T-shirt on and shorts and flip-flops, doesn't represent Hall at all. But the non-student athlete has a Hall baseball cap on, Hall pull over and got the beer in their hand. Don't tell me they're not representing Hall.
No, the difference is the coach was clear with them, as were we.
But that's the problem.
If you engage in that, and so that can be, good people can disagree on this. Should there be any kind of punishment? The other thing I'll push back is them losing a $250,000 scholarship for not being part of it. We also have scholarships going out to music, to musicians throughout our schools, and academics, and they have to report their suspensions. So anybody that's suspended for anything risks, I know that we've had kids that were up for a final scholarship, and I know that's why they didn't get it, because of variations on the honor code. Or, for example, National Honor Society. An admission to National Honor Society, which not being in isn't, whether you're in, not in, but the question of what does that mean as far as teachers when they're okaying those kids. So I don't think there's no punishment. But so I just want to keep different things. This is about, are you participating in our activities? What you're talking about would be a requirement to change the entire West Hartford discipline model, as it would be discipline model within the state of Connecticut, meaning we have to mandate everything that happens on weekends too, or during the summer, which this is separating a little bit because it's a coach. One of the things that people will talk about is the loophole, which is frustrating to me, but it's a loophole. It happens during the summer. They're not in season. They're not suspended because it's not in season. One day before, the next day would have been in season. Those are the kind of things, but a captain who's already been named, they're going to lose their leadership position, possibly. Under the current model, they would. And so there's a lot of pieces involved in this, and if we don't believe that we should hold athletes or musicians or actors or people that are representing our schools, and if the community believes we shouldn't hold them to a different standard than any other student, that's what the community belief would be. That's not my belief. But that could be the outcome of these committees, and they could come through with that, and the policy committee could, and you could vote on that. This is just for if you are participating in sports, activities, representing West Hartford Public Schools, be that wearing a uniform that says Hall on it or being up on a stage with your peers. You've made an agreement to your peers and to your coach. On an editorial note, as people say, well, everybody does it, that's not a good excuse to me. And that really bothers me that parents lean on that. And that's not what you're doing. I don't mean that. Don't take that about you, because I know you better than that. I'm saying that comes up sometimes. This is a good debate for people to have, and I don't think you and I are even debating. I think we agree on 90% of this. It's a question of what are we looking for out of this? I don't know if you... Yeah.
So before you move on,
Yeah.
you're using the CIAC rules and there is no authorship here.
No, our rules are different than the CIAC.
But that's what you're basing it on, some of it, your background.
No, that's background information.
Right.
Yeah, that's background research.
So how is it that you're going to hold, and where are you getting your policy from for the jazz, pops and jazz people, for the singers and the artists?
That's the same right now currently as the one for athletes.
That's
That is
in the
exactly
handbook,
the same
Mark.
right
It's
now.
in the handbook right now, that
So
extracurricular,
they are given the
co-activity,
exact same. So this
and
is
athletic
called-
activities have the same,
Yeah.
So
consequence.
when you start treating a group of students differently, it'll go out in the real world, right? If you start treating employees differently through a student handbook, through a handbook, you don't have one typically you have a handbook for all people employed. Your teachers and administrators, or all your teachers, whether they're science, English, probably have the same handbook, right? Although
No.
science has a different handbook than
No,
English?
it depends on level. Your handbook would be different for a teacher versus an administrator.
No, I corrected
Yeah.
myself. I didn't say
Oh, I
administrator.
got you. Okay.
So teachers, your English teacher and your math teacher have the same handbook.
The Connecticut Code of Professional Conduct.
So you're not differentiating because of their
Oh, we
technical-
differentiate between the high school and elementary school, after-school office hours. The Conard teacher handbook is different than
Yeah, I'm trying to leave it in
Webb
high
Hill
school.
teacher handbook.
So, It's just that when you carve out the athletes, there's added pressure. So they represent West Hartford, right? But that particular student getting caught drinking a beer on a weekend, I really don't think it plays any role, because then you're saying it's not a sponsored event. It's outside the bounds of your jurisdiction, right? And we're trying to put policy on that.
No, it's within the bounds. We could do drug testing for athletes. Some schools do.
No, I'm talking about on a week. You can't come to my house
We
and give
can
my
drug
kid
test
a
on a
drug kit
Monday.
on a weekend.
We can drug test on a Monday.
Yes, you could. That's fine.
I mean, so that goes to the same thing. So the point is this, listen, like I said, good people can disagree. I am of the belief, and I was definitely of this belief as a coach, that I sat my team down and said, we are now in this together. We are training together. You are part of this brotherhood or sisterhood, because I coach sports that are boys and girls. And I said, you're making a commitment to each other that during the next 2 months, your priority is going to be school, family, and faith, whatever else involved in this team. And because of that, you're going to be committed to training, how you treat your body, how you treat yourselves, and how you represent us in the community. And part of that is you're not going to be at parties. You're not going to be drinking. And the best part about that is I'm giving kids an excuse not to go. That's what the athletes continuously would say that didn't do it was, you know what? I had a reason why I didn't have to do it. I had a reason I could say I can't do this. I can't lose my scholarship. I can't have this happen, or I can't get kicked off the team or missing a game. So I've seen it work. I've seen it with coaches that do it, and that team, that season, it's worked. And I've seen it where people say to me, nah, nobody's following it.
I get it, right?
Yeah.
What about the math student, just the student that doesn't have that communication, right? And they go out and drink. You're not giving that student the same amount of insight because they're not playing a sport. So that communication, that coach to student respect doesn't get a regular student involved, right? So if you give that speech in a locker room and the kids absorb it and they believe you and really want to walk the line, great. But that doesn't get communicated to John Smith in 11th grade that's not an athlete and doesn't participate in clubs, and he's out there free willy-nilly doing whatever he wants. So there's the leadership one that doesn't, there's a lack of leadership for that student, because now if you hold everybody accountable, all the same, everybody gets that speech.
Except here's
not
the key
enforceable.
difference. It's a right to take math in a public school in the state of Connecticut. It is not a right to play a sport or be on stage. It's a privilege. And you have a privilege to live up to. It is not a right to be on a team, or else we wouldn't have cuts. It is not a right to be in a play, or else we wouldn't have different people getting leads and positions. It's a privilege. And so that's the key difference to me. And your point, Mark, you're not alone in your point. And that's something that the committee will look at. That's something that the committee will talk about. And if that's the dominant factor that comes out, we shouldn't hold students to different standards. Then if that's the community's belief, we would represent the community in some way. I'd be against it, but that's me.
And I'm coming to you without a dog in the fight too, because I don't have that problem. It's a matter of, there's difference, like in the, it's just that these kids have so much pressure on them, right? And not that this is pressure or not pressure, right? It's just not treating everyone equally, right? And then in the back of their mind, they have to toe a different line than their student next to them. That's all. And I think equity across the line is better than singling out people because they're playing for a sport. You don't treat the student athletes any different because it's a privilege. You're not treating them any different in school. There's no, we discussed a lot of things about student athletes over the last 9 months, and their consideration really was not considered all that much in the argument. It was talked about, but not really considered as a big item. So where's their special acknowledgement Where is their, if they're, these athletes, the professional athletes, you're talking about paying college athletes. That's a whole different game there. They get treated differently. Our student athletes don't get treated differently. They are just like any other student, and I think should be treated like any other student. It's my belief.
Yeah, I'd like to say something about this. I feel like if you guys are going to be changing up these requirements, I mean, you should go easier on first-time offenders. I mean, kids make mistakes. It happens. I mean, we all remember what happened earlier this year, shortly before the Hall-Conard football game. I won't go into any more detail, but I mean, as far as I know, that was the guy's only time doing anything like that. And I mean, they really brought down the hammer on him, not just for football, but in other things too. I mean, I really think that was just unfair to him.
The first time is 4 weeks.
4 weeks. Yeah.
4 weeks off of any activity, which the difference is you are not kicked off, you're not off. It's 4 weeks where you can't participate in games. You're still expected at practices. You're still expected to be a part of the team.
That's a season. That's
No,
almost a season.
It's not.
Well, it's 6, 8,
If
6,
it happens on
6, 7
if it
weeks.
happens on
These
April.
are
6,
probably
7 weeks
good
is a season.
questions
Point of order.
that the committee will be looking at. This might be a good thing that we'll be taking a look at.
Dave.
I'm going to express a frustration. It's not at any individual, not at anyone. Just as a board member, parents bring this to me all the time. The pace of this change, I'm saddened that it didn't happen sooner, but I'm excited at the 3-month timeline here. That's great. I wish we had implemented this 3-month timeline earlier in the year. But having been on the board, I do understand things. And Andy, I appreciate you showing us how you're setting it up and putting all the things in place so that when it comes time, you can, start things and get rolling. I really do hope that we're able to stick to this timeline, or as Cheryl mentioned with the election and the installment of new board members, that sometime close to that. It's a laudable, honorable goal, and I encourage you to work hard towards that. And as was also mentioned, I appreciate the inclusion of not only the athletes, but the musicians and things like that. You have me thinking, Mark, I do have a dog in this fight, because we went on a cruise on April vacation. I took a picture of my son. He had a chocolate shake. I had a mudslide. My wife took a look at that picture. She said, we can't post that on Facebook. It could be taken the wrong way. He got a scholarship. We don't need to take the chance. All of us parents have that responsibility to make sure and to guide our kids to say, hey, even though we know there's nothing going on here, we know that somebody could look at this, it could go the wrong way. And so, you know what? Just delete that picture, and it's not worth the chance. This is a personal story that we had. But I do also, I am concerned. I know that everybody who's plans to participate in anything extracurricular, Andy, they have to go to this, for lack of a better word, anti-drug meeting at the beginning of the year, anti-substance abuse. Mm-hmm. It's not just athletes, it's everybody. You're going to be in the play, you're going to be in the band, things like that. I wonder, the name of this, we keep referring to the Student Athlete Handbook, and to me that does feel, and you hear a lot of parents asking, you'll see it on Facebook, do my kids have to go to the meeting tonight, even though they're not an athlete? And I'm wondering if we might want to consider, maybe the policy committee could consider changing that to student participation or extracurricular.
Sure. That's something that we'll definitely take a look at. I mean, again, it delineates that within the handbook, but we'll certainly take a look at
But
it.
yeah, even right on the cover, because a kid could look at that and say,
Nope,
I
that's
played tuba.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. But thank you for your efforts. This is great, and boy, I think everybody on the board would say anything we can do to assist with this, please let us know.
Thank you, everybody, for that healthy discussion. Andy, I just have one question for you. I'd like to know, how are the students selected to be members on this committee?
We're going to leave that and talk with the high school principals about selecting representatives from each of the schools.
I'm going to follow up. When students are usually selected to be on these committees with administration, are there certain things that are taken into consideration? And the reason for my question is, I know just through life experience that, and just like in adults, that they're usually the same people who are selected to be on 1,000 committees. And so I'm just wondering.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, we definitely try to balance that, and we'll work with them to make sure that different sports are represented, different seasons, different gender, and certainly make sure that that's a balanced approach.
Anybody else? Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Next up is new graduation requirement update. We have Mr. Paul Vicinas and Miss Ann McKiernan will report.
Just on a side note, because we're talking policy while they're getting ready, the policy committee, we were going through many policies over a lot, and then we seem to stop on some policies. I'm just wondering where we are with that.
From the policy committee would like to comment?
Yes, you're going to see some policies at our next board meeting for review. And we did have a changeover in our assigned corporation counsel this year, so that did kind of slow up our work a little bit. But you'll see some at our next board meeting, and we'll try to pick up the pace so you have more reading material in the fall.
Good evening, everyone. Pleased to be presenting here with Ann McKiernan, our Director of Secondary Education. I know you know her well. And this is really just a follow-up to the December 4th report that we provided on high school graduation requirements, which I'll just very briefly remind you. There's no formal written report, as you know. Just to really update from that report and talk to you about what's changed and see if you have any questions. So just to refresh your memory, pursuant with Public Act 17-42 and commencing with the graduating class of 2023, which is our rising ninth grade class, next year's freshman class, all students will need to earn 25 credits in order to graduate, all students within the state of Connecticut. To review, there are some specific credit distributions that are included within those 25 credits. There is a minimum of 9 credits of humanities that is required. We will obviously sustain within those 9 credits of humanities. We will sustain the 4 credits of English, the requirements for U.S. history and American government. What's new to those 9 credits of humanities is a 1 credit of world language. That's new under this legislation. And what's new in policy for us is a half a credit of arts education. Second requirement, new bundling, 9 credits of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We are maintaining 3 credits of mathematics under this STEM requirement. And under policy, we are upping our science requirement from 2 to 3, and still requiring that distribution of 1 physical science and 1 life science. What's new in this legislation is a total of 2 credits of health and physical education. They increased that from what was previously the statutory requirement. There is room for 4 additional electives. Anything outside of what is statutory is elective. And there is also the requirement of a 1 credit mastery experience. So those were the general parameters of the law that we reported on December 4th. We had a follow-up on February 20th where the board updated its policy 6310, high school graduation requirements, to essentially adopt not only these requirements but talk about some of the specifications that you wanted to maintain. And so that's where we were. So talking about what's happened since then. And I'll let Ann share some of this because she has really been a dramatic asset in chairing some of this work. But kind of the bottom line up front is that we feel well prepared to meet the challenges of these new credit requirements. So we'll talk about 3 basic things. We'll talk about our communication plans. We'll talk about our mastery experience. And then I want to jump back in and talk about some legislative updates.
Thank you, Paul. So I'll give you a little bit of an update on where we are at this point. Thank you for your good questions during the process to get us to today. Currently, we have updated our handbook and our program of studies for our students. So the 25 graduation credits are reflected there because communicating this is very important to our students and our parents. We've provided messaging through the open houses that the high schools have to the incoming ninth grade classes, the welcome nights. We've updated our website. We've provided meetings with our counselors, because counselors are crucial to this process. They need to have the most updated information. They need to know what to do next year, right? Because right now they'll be receiving a class of 2023. How do I schedule them from freshman year on? So we've worked with them around their questions because they're so important. Counselors are conducting outreach to parent questions and student questions. And we also made a presentation to the PTC. Thank Dave Palyuk for being there. That was just, I think, this April. We made that presentation. We have more communication planned with our stakeholders. Certainly at our back to school open houses, this will be addressed. Ninth grade parent and family letters welcoming people back to school. We have a plan to make sure our ninth grade counselors, our setup at the high school is that there are 8 counselors at each, but 2 are devoted to the ninth grade classes. So those people will be crucial in communicating information to the students. And we want to include information on certain aspects of the ninth grade, on the credits in the freshman seminar program that all of our freshmen are involved in. So once a week for the first semester, the freshmen meet with their counselors during like a study hall period of time, and they get a wealth of information about the high school, and this information will be embedded in there. I'd like to also go on, there's one new credit, as Paul alluded to, called the Mastery Experience. So far, what we've done is to draft an approach to that, because it is a very different credit. It's a non-seat time credit students can earn in demonstrating mastery towards a goal, and it is not defined exactly how to do it. So what we've done is we have put a little think tank together, listened to other districts and what they're doing, got some other inputs, and we've had some drafts of proposals that we've shared with principals and department supervisors and gotten some feedback, revised and shared again. And now what we're ready to do is bring a curriculum council together, a curriculum writing group together that would represent at least one teacher from every discipline and counseling, and that will take place June 26 and 27, where we will flesh out all the details of the Mastery Experience credit and be prepared to share with families by the fall. I think those are our big points.
Those are the major points. As we've said, I'll just reiterate, our initial guidance to our counseling staff has been to not program differently. We know that by and large, the 25 credits are attained currently. Really, 24 plus the mastery credit are attained currently by the majority of our students. So the pockets where we need to do some work, that work is ongoing. We have, in terms of legislative updates, some information Tom shared was feedback from the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents. It does seem that a majority of districts are reporting readiness for implementation of the new graduation requirements. They're providing that feedback to the legislature, so we're not anticipating any postponement. That was one of the things we wanted to be able to come back and provide an update. Will this be postponed as it has been for the last several years? As you know, as we've reported, this new legislation has been kind of an idea on paper for close to 10 years, and it's kind of been kicked down the road. So it does appear that end is in sight for this coming class. But there is some other legislative bills that are out there that could potentially have an impact on graduation. One that was a little bit of a concern. It's a great effort, a great-minded bill that originally came forward that was going to add 2 social studies credits as a requirement for all students. And we were saying, where are we going to fit 2 required social studies classes into the 25? And essentially, what choice will students have remaining? And I think the legislature heard some of that, so they've changed that proposal to a 1-credit class, the focus being on African American and Latino studies within the social studies domain. And that's going to be a mandatory elective offering for all schools in Connecticut. And we're actually excited by that. The state is going to do some additional work to put together a model framework as to what might be intended to be instructed. However, we feel that we're well poised given that we have courses that meet that. It'll actually give us the opportunity to measure the goals of our existing courses in those areas against what the state model curriculum is. And I think it'll also be a nice buzz that parents will hear a lot about those courses. Will hear that we already have something, and it might stimulate even further enrollment in those. But that being said, that's pretty much the update, and we would love to open it up to questions, comments, clarifications.
Thanks. Just following up on what Ann mentioned when she presented this to the Parent-Teacher Council. It was very interesting, and thank you and Tom for your efforts in answering all the questions. But the parents are nervous about this for their kids, especially consider if you've got a child in high school now and another one coming along. There's two different sets of things, and how do I help my child, and how will my child know what to do? And there's so many variables, especially with that mastery component being a bit fuzzy right now. And every parent's going to have a question, well, what if my kid's an Eagle Scout? You know, what if my kid is going to work as a lifeguard in the summer? You know, there's so many different things, so it's really neat. You did a great job handling all those questions, and they're just going to keep coming, so the work that you're doing is going to be valuable, but there will still be more questions, so I appreciate all your efforts.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, David. Something I said that night, and it's clear the 24 plus 1, I like looking at it that way, the 24 plus 1, the one mastery experience. That's where different districts right now, the feedback is this has cost districts. Some have added classes, some have had to add world language staff, specifically being an area where they hadn't met it. For us, it's going to be managing that. I mean, that's where I don't see how this won't lead to an added position at each high school to manage 350 graduating seniors at each school have met the requirement for some outside validation. Some will reach it through their natural coursework, where they can get a capstone. We'll have courses that will have capstone designations that if you take that, you're done. But then that, just as you said, the Eagle Scout project versus work that you're paid for versus work that you're not paid for versus nonprofit. And so those are the kind of things that we'll have to flesh out. We've got a little bit of time because this is for next year's freshmen, so they won't be involved in this for a couple years. But it's something we'll, I'm sure just as we think we have it figured out, there will be a situation comes up that we didn't think of, so.
Thank you, and thank you for the update. I actually have three things, but one of them piggybacks to that mastery thing. I understand about the potential position, and I understand that may be necessary. I want to emphasize what you guys yourselves have emphasized before, that this, which I think is a fabulous idea, not become another burden for teachers. So I just want to say that I think it's very difficult, and while no one's in favor of adding yet more personnel, I just want to make sure that it doesn't simply become teachers have to do something else. So I just commend you on the variety of things that you're thinking about. Oh, go ahead.
If I may, I just want to repeat that. I think this summer's curriculum work, where at least one teacher from every department will be represented, that's a question we will put right out to them. Where's the line? And as Superintendent Moore mentioned, there are going to be, in our vision, opportunities to complete mastery work in courses with a little differentiation, but honestly, there's a lot of differentiation that already occurs. So I will have the teachers, I believe with almost 10 people on this committee, we will get a good input from the teachers about where they see the right line for this.
In and out.
I'm sorry?
You mentioned and we'll find ways. We also have talked about ways they'll think there will be opportunity for something that's outside of courses.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Right, but we don't want to make the teachers then have to be the people who are paying attention to that's what I'm saying. The bureaucracy of showing, okay, did you do the lifeguarding? That all has to fall to somebody too. So,
correct.
No, but I think that it's really exciting that you're giving so many opportunities. I think it's a great program. So I appreciate keeping the teachers in mind. The second question again, I think you're doing an amazing job. I just want to come back to something that you guys, if I recall, alluded to last time, and I just want to know how that's progressing, which was your concern about the 25 credits for students who, special needs students or other students who didn't have enough time in the day because they had these other things, and you were trying to figure out how to get credit for those. How is that moving along?
So I don't want to pull the veil off all of it right away because we have, not that it's a surprise so much as we've made progress. I don't know if we're at the 100% solution, so to speak. We've had a lot of, my office had a lot of work with Gretchen Nelson and her staff of department supervisors. We're looking specifically at how we're delivering some of our, both our content area support for students with learning disabilities, as well as the specialized instruction that relates to the goals and objectives within their IEP. In fact, over the course of the last couple of months, Gretchen and her staff put together a self-assessment of that major part of pupil services programming with some recommendations about how we might want to change that, how we can affect credit for that, because historically those have been simply opportunities and requirements for students where learning takes place without necessarily any award of credit. So we've engaged in those conversations as to what constitutes credit, what level of curriculum and learning and instruction has to take place, needs to take place, versus what's simply more of a supportive, quieter study, but necessary structure for students. And what are those things that, how do we want to award it? So we feel that we're in good shape with that. In addition, we've had several conversations, but looking specifically at those students, as we know, that's been more of a dropout prevention type thing. So students are historically entering that program behind in their credits. So we're looking closely at what is the structure of that school day, and more importantly for those students, what does this more expansive credit distribution across humanities, across STEM, with world language, with the increase in health, how does that change our programming? And so we're already have some good plans on the blueprint. Some we've scrapped, some that are holding their shape on paper, and we're looking at how we're going to implement those changes coming up. So the short answer is I think we're in pretty good shape. I wanted to give you some specifics to make you feel confident in that, but it's part of our ongoing work for the summer. We feel confident we'll be in a good place in the fall.
Well, thank you, and I didn't want to ruin any surprises. I just wanted to make sure that you guys felt comfortable in where you were, that we weren't going to suddenly discover in October that actually, so, because I know that was a concern of yours. So it's great. There's so many moving parts. I really commend you on that. And the third thing is just a really minor thing that you guys have no control over anyway, but this new course proposal about African Americans and Latinos, I understand. I think it's a wonderful thing, but I just hope whoever's listening that this is Connecticut. It would be very nice if we could also have a Native American component in that. I know that you're not directly involved in that, but whatever course that we design, at least, it seems to me we got to recognize that there's a long history there in Connecticut, too. That's it.
Yeah, it's an interesting it's an interesting point and question of what does a Latinx course look like in Connecticut versus in Texas?
Right.
And how does that, if you only have a semester and if you're looking at it and you're giving a broad look at it, what does that mean? You're right. I mean, this will go to the state social studies department to develop a model curriculum. And I do think that's a problem with legislating the name of a course. Yes. Instead of legislating what will be involved in a course, which I understand why legislators have to do it that way, but that is the danger. And the danger before was it was 1 year of each, that none of us are against that. But the mandate, that would have meant, okay, which science courses are we now cutting, math course? So, but they listened, and I think I think the bill that is going to come out through the process is a much better bill.
I just have a comment, and I just want to thank the two of you and other people who've contributed to this process. I know that you've put in a lot of work and a lot of effort, and I specifically want to recognize the guidance counselor because they're really key and critical to this entire high school experience. I mean, I can give a big shout out to the guidance counselor who was very influential, if you will, in our family in terms of getting my kids through the process and just sort of being that anchor throughout the process. So as Dave mentioned, with the new requirements and something new, and especially with families who have kids that are in the current process and then kids are going to be transitioning to the new, it can be very stressful on the student as well as the parent. So I just want to say thanks for recognizing that guidance counselor because he or she is very critical in this whole process moving forward.
Next up is routine matters, which is approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes of the May 7th, 2019 Board of Education meeting. There was just one small change that was added to the minutes, and so it was the last sentence on the minutes that read, "The board asks questions regarding college entrance, administrative personnel, racial gaps, absenteeism, out-of-district placements, expulsion, suspension, and express concerns about racial imbalance." So may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Information and reports. Board members have any communication and reports or reports from other boards and organizations? Okay.
All right, good evening. I have two things that I would like to share update. One is taking place next week on Wednesday, May the 29th, Thursday, May the 30th, and Friday, May the 31st. And that is the Witness Stones Project. They'll be having their second round of installation ceremonies taking place on those days that were mentioned. As we know, this is a wonderful program that is recognizing the ancestors of those that have been enslaved in West Hartford and the contributions they have made. This is a project being led by Tracy Wilson and Liz Devine, and it's led by them, but they're also leading our children as well in working with our young people throughout the school system. And so very much would encourage for you to come. It's going to be at the First Church at 9:30 on those days. And certainly I thank my colleagues here for supporting the program and those that will be participating and or speaking at those events next week. The second piece I would like to share, and I will try not to be too braggadocious about it, is that we have our West Hartford students from Charter Oak International Academy who will be traveling beginning this evening and tomorrow to Michigan, Michigan State that is, to participate in the World Championship of the Odyssey of the Mind. We have two teams from Charter Oak that have won the state competition and have advanced to the world competition, so we certainly are proud of them as they are representing our whole West Hartford school system. And so they will be there for the remainder of the week, and regardless of how it turns out with where they place, they have already won in all of our hearts. So we certainly want to cheer and encourage all of them on. And I say that because my daughter is a team member as well, so that's where the braggadocious piece comes from. But we're proud of everyone, proud of them all.
And along those same lines, I just want to tell you about my chance to see the Hall Concert Jazz Band that Megan had mentioned perform at Jazz at Lincoln Center. This was my second time to go. Quite an honor. It's one of the coolest things when you're a member of the Board of Ed. You get to do things like this. And remember, my kids go to Conard. But once again, this is a Hall Concert Jazz Band. These guys are good, you know, and they're representing the town as a whole. And what a great job they did. And they had a tough job, too. Well, just to get there is an honor. But then our kids were performing Saturday morning at 11 a.m. I don't know how you feel at 11 a.m. on a Saturday morning. But they get up on the stage, you're nervous and things like that, and perform in front of a group of your peers, judges, including Wynton Marsalis right there. It was just crazy. But they did us proud. I got to say, just to give you an idea, you may recall from last time, well, there are 15 bands that performed. 7 performed on Friday, 4 Saturday morning and 4 Saturday afternoon. And again, they're all winners for being there. But of those, they choose 3, the top 3, to get special mention. Unfortunately, we didn't get that special mention, but numerous mentions that Megan told us about. But of the 3 that were pulled out and honored as outstanding groups, it was the last band Friday afternoon, the first band Friday morning, and the second band, or Saturday morning, the second band Saturday morning. We were the third band Saturday morning. So everybody, these kids, they're just doing great. All of them, everyone was wonderful. Congratulations to them all. Back in my day, I played trombone and bass trombone, and I never got to this level. So I just have lots of respect for these guys, and congratulations to them all.
Just a funny story, Dave. Thanks for saying that. I was at a track meet today, and a mom came up to me. Did you hear about the musicians at Hall? I'm like, no, because in the 7 years I've been on this, I never get good news when a mom or a parent comes up to me about anything on the Board of Ed. So never do they. She goes, no, that they went to New York, and I said, yeah, 2 years in a row. Oh, of course I know that. It was like she approached me like something was wrong, and it was, and I says, of course I know they went there. So it's just a funny story that, people notice it out there, and it was one of the few stories in my 7 years being on the board that it was a pleasant one coming from a parent. So there's people out there that are recognizing it, and our program is top notch.
Anybody else for other information and discussions? Okay. So at this time, before I move to future business, I want to address the tabled item of rethinking school start times. Back in November, this item was tabled for further discussion and review to be raised again in May. After much discussion, it appears that option 2 is not suitable for most students and families. Yes, the science is clear that the proposed later start time for high school students is most beneficial for their mental and physical health. However, we are aware of the several challenges of several issues of the proposed solution. The proposed middle school start time for middle school students and most families can be a challenge. Although the proposed elementary school start time is just 5 minutes later, this too can present family and district challenges also. The board learned through further analysis that the cost of transportation and bus runs can exceed $2 million if both the high school and middle school began at 8:15. Questions were also raised around early dismissals for student athletes and other activities. How will sports that use town facilities be impacted? What type of impact will this have on critical learning and meeting new state requirements for high school graduation that we just listened to? Academics are this board's first and foremost concern for the students in this district. These are all critical concerns that must be addressed before a decision and a vote can go forward. For now, this issue must remain tabled and the start time will remain as is. Again, thank you to the committee and to the district leaders for their time and efforts in providing valuable information regarding this issue. I'll move to future business, which is announcement of future meeting dates. So the last board meeting for the year will be Tuesday, June 4th, 2019, which is our regular Board of Education meeting right here in this room in Town Hall at 7 p.m. And this room is the Legislative Chamber room of 314. Do we have any requests for future agenda items? Okay, I believe that we may have a comment from a visitor. So just for the record, there's 3 minutes per individual, and we need you to state your name and your address.
Okay, great.
Yes, and you just begin speaking into the mic.
Okay. Thank you. It was a pleasure. I don't come to enough Board of Ed meetings. Thank you. So that was okay that I was late. Good evening. My name is Kim Hughes, and I am a parent volunteer in West Hartford. My children attend Charter Oak and Bristow. I have an invitation for you guys. I believe it was communicated by email, but I wanted to deliver it personally. We have an event at Charter Oak. It's Soulfire Farm is visiting Charter Oak. It's a real active working farm. They're actually activists and farmers, I would say. But I wanted to give you a little bit of background because parents, it meant so much to us. We got a grant to pay for this. It's allowed us to offer free babysitting. We're offering pizza for people, really an effort to be as inclusive as possible. We're super excited about it. I don't know if you can tell. So I have, I think, even more insight. I work with children. I watch them play in worm compost. I just even today see the impact it has when children are in touch with nature, when they're connected to the land. They're calm. They're calmer. They want that connection. I mean, even the most squeamish, I will see in minutes like dig their hand into pond scum. It's amazing. I mean, and they're interested. They're amazed. It's in us. But our children all come to this experience differently, okay? So for some, it's instant. Some kids have parents, have families who offer this connection to them. Some kids don't. Some kids live in apartments and they're surrounded by concrete. It's important for all of us, however. All you need to do is look in the newspaper to see what happens in a world where some of us, many of us, maybe have lost our connection to the land. And so air quality, water quality, soil quality, it has all been degraded over time, and I think has become a really urgent situation. So that's why I'm here today. We're bringing Soulfire Farm. What is so amazing about them is that they're a real working farm, and they use practices that heal both the land and the people. Because see, what has happened is that there are some communities that have even more of a disconnect, and usually it's Black and brown and Indigenous people of color. That's really important. So they, again, heal both the land and the people. They seek to break down the systemic barriers in farming and in the food system and that exist for these marginalized communities everywhere, and they have a really compelling story. So please come. It's this Thursday. I know the calendar is crowded. It's 6:30 at Charter Oak. Pop in even for a minute. It will be a great conversation. I'm not going to give away any more, but I do have a few compelling questions that I want to leave you with. Maybe you can get answers when you come. What is the whitest industry in America? When was the last time you thought about the people who work the land to grow and harvest the food that you eat? And where do you go for fresh food? How far do you travel for fresh food? How might a child's behavior and capacity to learn differ from eating like fresh vegetables and fruits as opposed to a honey bun and chocolate milk, which is actually something they might get for breakfast at our schools. It's approved. So if you eat, you care. Join us Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Thank you. And I have a few of these I'll leave behind right at this table. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, we do not have executive session. May I have a motion to adjourn? A second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned at 8:20.